Hi, I'm Jay Gruenke, founder of The Balanced Runner, and I've been helping runners from beginner to Olympian improve their form and performance since 2003. And I'm here today with another stuck-at-home running form tip from my living room to yours, helping you use this time as an opportunity to become a better runner. So today I'm finishing up my series on breathing. If you've missed the previous videos, the link to the playlist is in the description below. You're going to want to watch all of them if breathing is at all something that you want to improve when you run. Today's topic is how your tight ankles and tight hips actually make it harder to breathe. And this is something that I think is not on people's radar, but it really should be because it makes a huge difference and it impacts all the stuff we've been talking about before. So I'm putting my best lesson for helping you free up your ankles and hips in the specific way that will make breathing a lot easier when you run. I'm putting a link to that lesson also in the description below. So you're definitely going to want to go get that lesson and do it all the way through. And then, of course, hit like and subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon if you haven't so that you don't miss a video. And check out all the great resources I have for you on balancedrunner.com. So, ankles. Let's talk about ankles. This is actually the first one in a while that needs to see my whole body. And Leroy is here. So when you run, as I've spoken about in many previous videos, you need to be leaning forward, so on a forward angle. And you may notice that when I go from straight, if you look at my back ankle, to leaning forward, the ankle bends, right? And so if you have a restriction in your ability to bend that ankle, then you're going to have an issue in leaning forward, but also even in just how far you can get past your stance foot. So remember, when you run, you put your foot down on the ground, you come onto it. Oops, I'm going to run out of space. Anyway, you've landed on the ground, you're on your foot, and then you have to move forward off it in order to take forward past it. So your pelvis goes past it in order to take off in the air. And in fact, that has to happen whether you're leaning forward or running upright. Your pelvis still has to get past your foot. And if your ankle is restricted, then as momentum is carrying you past your foot, you are going to stop being able to bend that ankle and oops, let me get my arm out of the way. So here's what happens if, theoretically, this leg is in the air. If your ankle bends enough, if your ankle doesn't bend enough, then you start to arch your back instead. All right. And you also just have to lift your heels sooner, and then you go more up in the air rather than as much forward. So that's the impact of an ankle that does not dorsiflex enough, that doesn't bend this direction enough on your running form. Again, you hit the limit of your ankle's ability to bend, and so then your pelvis has to stop moving forward. So then it tips forward and your upper body moves forward and your lower back gets more and more arched. And then you have to lift your heel and then you go up into the air. So I'm exaggerating a little bit just so you can see what I'm talking about. But that's the dynamic. So what happens when your pelvis stops and it stops moving forward and tips instead? Well, look at my chest. It just went up, right? Up and back. So we're talking about breathing. And as I've been talking about for the last 5 videos, I think, chest breathing does not get you as much oxygen as if you properly use your diaphragm. It's not that your chest should never move, especially at intense effort. Everything is going to move. But you don't want to be breathing primarily by lifting your chest when you run. And the way you organize your body for your running, if it already pushes your chest up, then these muscles are already active and you're already in a position where you're going to tend to chest breathe and where it's going to be difficult to use your diaphragm properly. And so if your ankles are pulling you into this position when you run, then you are going to be much more inclined to chest breathe, and you're going to feel like you're short of breath. And it's just hard to get enough air, especially when you're running faster. So the impact of this can be really quite large. And the exact same movement pattern happens if you have too much of a restriction in your hip joint, what's called hip joint hyperextension. That is the ability of your thigh bone to move backwards in your hip joint. So if you can't, same thing. So you're in mid stance, you're moving. Let me get closer to the sofa so I can hold myself. So you're in mid stance, you're moving forward. Even if your ankle is free enough to allow that movement, if you run out of play in your hip joint, then as you try to move farther past it, your lower back is going to start to arch instead. And that does the exact same thing to your chest and your diaphragm. So in fact, when you look at a runner who is getting into this situation, who's running with their back like this, it's almost certain that either the ankle joint dorsiflexion is restricted, the ability to do this movement with your ankle, or the hip joint hyperextension is restricted, or both. And in fact, just from looking at the running form, you don't know whether it's one or the other or both, because the effects are identical. And so if you, well, then you would test, then you would check. And so I did a whole series of videos on forward lean, including how your hips and how your ankles impact your ability to lean forward. And so there's a lot more detail in there about how to troubleshoot this and what to do about it. So I'm going to also put the link to my forward lean playlist in the description below, because you're going to want to review that to understand this more thoroughly and make sure that you're dealing with the exact problem you have and not the problem that somebody else has that looks kind of similar to yours. But the free lesson, Free Your Feet, that I've put in the description below helps with both hip joint extension and ankle plantar flexion or extension, pointing the ability to do that. Well, the ability to do both. So it's the end of a long week, and I am looking at my outline. Yes, but here's the thing that you need to understand, is that it's not, so I'm talking about how restriction at the hip joint or the ankle joint will tip your pelvis forward, give you an anterior pelvis tilt, arching your back. But I don't want you to walk away from this video thinking that it is always bad to tilt your pelvis forward, because in fact, it's essential that you tilt your pelvis forward for good running form. You can't lean forward without a forward pelvic tilt. You know, like I'm leaning forward here, my back is on a forward angle, and that includes my pelvis being tilted forward or vertical. And if I pull my pelvis upright, I'm no longer leaning forward, I'm rounding my back. So it's all a question of, do you have restriction here? And what is the amount of forward tilt that you're creating? And are you doing the right thing with your head to turn that forward anterior pelvic tilt, forward tilt, into a forward lean? So my pelvis is tilted forward, and this arm keeps being in the way. My pelvis is tilted forward and my lower back is arched. My pelvis is still tilted forward the same amount, but my lower back is no longer arched. What changed? My upper body. Instead of running upright with an anteriorly tilted pelvis, I am now leaning forward, right? So assuming that you don't have a high level of restriction in your hip joint, in your ability to extend your hip joint and your ability to flex your ankle, then an anterior pelvic tilt is correct, and you need to make sure that you're moving your face forward. And 2 videos ago, I talked about the importance of head position for opening your airway and for good breathing. And uh, in previous videos, I've talked about the importance of that exact same thing for creating a forward lean. So an anterior pelvic tilt is not something to be fixed. If you have the problem that you're getting into a really arched back position when you run, check and see, are your calves tight? Is it hard for you to bend your ankle very much, more than 90 degrees? Do you have trouble getting your leg at all behind you without tilting your pelvis? And then work on those things with the lesson that I've given you below. And then work on your forward lean by improving your ability to take your head forward. So, so that you've got this position when you run, minus the sofa. So hopefully that gives you a full picture here. And I think that I don't even have any questions. So I'm going to take that as a sign that I've been clear. I'm going to thank you so much for watching. Hi, Adelino. Nice to hear from you. Adelino was following up with me on our conversation yesterday, one-to-one coaching via YouTube live stream. Yeah, so Adelino was trying to extend his breathing over more gait cycles, so he's breathing more slowly. And so Adelino, I mean, the thing that you would need to change is you would need to run more slowly. Like, that's the point, is if 5 steps per breath cycle is the most that you can get, then you're probably running a little too fast on a daily basis. You should have some runs that are slower, where it's possible to do, 4-3 or 5-4. So it's not a matter of manipulating your breathing, it's a matter of changing your speed. Kate, hey! Kate says, I have narrow nostrils. Recommend nose clip or strip. I've never tried either of those, Kate, so I don't know the answer. Definitely, I would just say try and see. And also bear in mind that there's an adaptation period to nose breathing when you run. And you definitely, it's the same as with footwear. Like, switching to minimalist footwear when you run has to come after you've already changed to minimalist footwear in your daily life. Working on nose breathing when you run has to happen on the foundation of making sure that you're nasal breathing in your daily life. So, make sure that you've got that in place. And then, try and make sure that you get your face well forward. And we've been working on that. And then, try then one of those, strips. I mean, I know that they've done research and say that you get more air in when you wear them. So it's worth a shot. Hey, Sam, nice to see you. You're welcome, Adelino. So guys, this is going to be my last daily live stream. As lockdown lifts and my to-do list mounts, I need to cut back a bit. And the number of people who've been telling me that they've been watching these videos, but they fell behind, tells me that there's a ton out there now, and you probably have a lot more that you can watch before you run out of video content from me. So this is video number 51. So I am going to now do one live stream a week on Wednesdays. So my next live stream is going to be next Wednesday, same time, 11 a.m. Pacific. So I will look forward to seeing you then. And, I hope that you really enjoy this weekend if you're in the US, the long weekend. Hopefully a somewhat better ability to get out there and running and put into practice some of the things that I've been talking about in these videos. It's been a real joy talking to you every day via YouTube. And I will, let's see. I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. Thanks so much, and I will see you next Wednesday.